something that I've seen more and more talk about in terms of hyper-personalization, also leading into women's health, is just focusing on even things like hormone tracking, maybe understanding what your program should be around your cycle and things like that, which I think there's not maybe enough focus on at the moment. And I know a lot of women are a little bit question mark around that. So I think that's something that going into, further into this year, I hope to see kind of more around.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Today, I'm joined by Cara Fautley, Senior Commercial Partnerships Manager and a driving force behind the annual Connected Health and Fitness Summit. With a rich background in strategic partnerships and event management, Cara pivoted from real estate events to focus on an industry that aligns with her passion for wellness and community. On this episode, we're going to explore the key themes that will be discussed at this year's summit, including GLP-1, the state of boutique fitness, and hyper-personalization. Before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Krissy Vann, and this is ATFW. Well, I am so excited to have an individual here that is no stranger to many and is also a gatherer of the people in our industry. Cara Fautley, thank you so much for carving out the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Krissy. It's great to be on here.
At time of recording, we're just weeks away from the Connected Health and Fitness Summit. And every single year, we're into 2025. We've just come off the heels of all the trend reports to wrap up the year. But I'm curious to know from yourself, obviously, a lot of work that your teams do is very research oriented. So what conversations do you feel are going to dominate in the fitness industry this year?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We have our own kind of in-house research team, and we do extensive research year round, but especially as we start to build out our program and our agenda. And there are a few key themes that are definitely trickling down through the agenda off the back of the research and what our, I guess, community is telling us is a priority for them. Those key themes being, longevity, preventative health, and GLP-1, which is something that I know everyone is talking about, but just really focusing especially on that longevity piece, the elements that does, involve and what's part of that, and how the fitness, maybe the mainstream fitness gyms and operators can actually look to incorporate more of that longevity element, whether it's recovery, whether it's sleep, whether it's nutrition, whether it's mindfulness. So that's a big conversation for us, as well as the GLP-1 debate, which is something that I know is top of mind for a lot of people. So that's probably a big one for us. And then also AI and digital transformation in fitness and health, which again is probably something a lot of people that are listening to this podcast will be thinking about. And then community and social wellness as well is a big conversation going into the 2025 event. There's been a real kind of increase in, I guess, the need for social workouts and group activities and making it more of a community feel. So that's another thing that we'll be talking a lot about. And then something we always talk about is diversity, inclusion, and women's health. That's something that is a year-on-year topic of conversation for us, as that's kind of ever-changing. And, with different workouts popping up and different ways of working out for the consumer, that's something that we always have to be conscious of.
Yeah, that last one's so keenly interesting for me because I know that obviously we've seen the fitness industry completely rebrand themselves from the consumer-facing side. We've gone from shredded ab advertisements to kick off the new year to that focus on mental health, holistic wellness, longevity, to your point. But when it comes to what's happening in women's health, I'm so fascinated because there's so many incredible femtech companies coming out of the woodworks. And from a healthcare perspective, I'm based in Canada. Our healthcare system, unfortunately, keeps moving slower and slower, although I don't get a bill, so I'm not complaining. But at the same time, when you're looking for answers in care, it is a long process, and that mirrors even in the paid systems in the United States. And women's health in particular has been so neglected. When you look at studies of testing done on men versus women, unfortunately, there's some drugs that women take that on the pharmaceutical side haven't even been tested on us. Like there's these endless components. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the industry as a whole to really step up in this space because the consumer now has more curiosity over data about themselves and wanting to hack their health a little bit more because they don't have the advocacy that's happening in their healthcare system. So I'm glad to hear that's part of the platform. We know that it's the time of year we're looking at our calendars, the industry events are filling up. So what really sets Connected Health and Fitness apart? And really, for those that haven't attended, what can they expect from the event?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I touched on, one of the things that does, make us stand out is that we are intensively research focused. But we have a number of industry summits and communities we build, and they are all off the back of loads of research we do year round. So that's something that I think, in terms of program content, just making sure we're ahead of getting the right topics tackled and the best speakers to talk to each topic is something that's really important for us. And then I would say, secondly, it's, for us, we are more of an intimate community. We're not a huge kind of trade show style event. We're a little bit more intimate and curated in who we bring together. And it really is looking at bringing decision makers, so very C-suite, very CEO focused, from the leading brands across fitness and health. So of course we have gyms and we have the studios and we have hotels, and but we also have Google and Apple and Meta, who are obviously playing a part in the connected side. We work with the likes of Gymshark and Nike and Adidas. So I guess it's really the whole width of fitness and health and the leaders from within that, outside of just obviously the gyms and studios, which is of course a base for us.
So advantageous to be able to draw from those related fields, because
Yeah.
then you get a different lens of perception. At the end of the day, there's a lot of facets of the fitness industry that for a long time, the formula kind of worked and it was rinse, wash, repeat every single
Yeah.
year. Whereas now there's this incredible diversification and incredible opportunity. I know the endless conversation of getting that other 80%, and whether that be a buzz statement or not, if we're really looking to get serious about it, I think the out of the box thinking is what's going to be required. And obviously, understanding consumer behavior and what's happening in the industry is so important with that. So on the research side, I'm curious, out of 2024, what were kind of some of the top findings that gave an aha moment or maybe a surprised moment in regards to the research studies that you conducted, that you were kind of like, did not see that coming, or something we really should be paying attention to?
I know I touched on this idea of, social workouts. And I actually think that also leans into gyms offering, more of a sports and recreation feel to what they're offering as well. So we've seen the rise of pickleball, which for me was, that was something that was probably quite random to a lot of people in the space.
Fastest growing sport in North America.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit like, well, for me, it felt a little bit out of nowhere. I didn't maybe expect that to rise so quickly and be so popular. So I think that lends itself to people wanting to work out with friends and people actually wanting to be active, maybe for the more of the angle of competition or fun. It's the same with Hyrox, right? That's a very different format of workout that's really been popular very quickly, and it's something that more and more people are now being a part of. And I think that lends itself, again, just people want to work out now for different options and different ways than just to maybe have the best physique or build or carry the strongest weights or the heaviest weights. So I think, yeah, leading into sports and recreation is definitely one. I also think we all have spoke a lot about longevity, and we are starting to see partnerships in the space around it. So I know that our partner for the event, Sleep Score Labs, they are now working with WellHub. So they're trying to obviously push more in the sleep part of the longevity piece. We also have seen that Crunch, for example, is starting to redesign some of their studios to have the recovery areas incorporated. So I think it's just going into and further into 2025, maybe more partnerships that are actually starting to on the ground incorporate these things and these different elements, and looking at longevity as not just longevity, but the different elements that makes up longevity. And that could be bringing in more kind of in clinics into gyms. I definitely think recovery zones is going to be something that people are focusing a lot more on, and having that rest and recovery area after their workout. I think being able to go to the gym for advice on nutrition, maybe, personalized programs around workouts and nutrition. And then obviously the mindfulness piece, People, we've seen the rise in kind of Pilates and stretching and yoga. And I think a lot of that as well is because it comes back to, it doesn't always have to be high impact. Sometimes it's for the mind as well as the body. So yeah, maybe nothing too crazily unexpected there, but I feel like just these different elements that are going to be, especially longevity, being broken further into going into 2025.
How about in regards to like research pieces that you've done? Because I'm just curious. You said that you do a lot of research in the space. So I'm like, what are some of the stats and findings that were most notable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we do a lot of, the other thing we do is a lot of profiling. So with our attendees, it's actually something kind of new we've been doing for 2025, but we are, as people are registering, we're asking them, what are your top 3 priorities going into 2025? What partnerships are you looking at? Maybe what are you evaluating going into the next 3 to 6 months? So we ask kind of all these questions to find out what our community wants and what they're investing in and what is a priority for them. And honestly, I will say I was surprised how many of them did come back and say recovery and nutrition. Like, I knew it would be a focus, but maybe not as wide a focus as was expected. So yeah, all of our themes and what we're talking about really does mirror the research we're doing, and that is such a huge focus for everyone.
In regards to research, you talked about another trend being GLP-1.
Yes.
There's 2 sides of the coin, I feel, all the time with this conversation. There's people that feel like we should be playing it, and obviously we have thought leaders already in the space that are kind of creating the blueprint, and then
Yeah.
there's others that are like, we're not, it's a human behavior element, and we're not actually going to crack the code on human behavior. What are you hearing on the GLP-1 front? Or dare I say, do you want to dive in and say, what are your predictions for our industry in regards to GLP-1s? Because we can't not talk. They're in the arena. They're not going anywhere. This is $1 trillion industry in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do have a panel on GLP-1 on our program for 2025, as maybe should be expected, and it is positioned as a debate. So the idea is that very much is a debate in real life. There are so many different views. So we are working with partners who do have differing views. It's not going to be a panel that everyone agrees, which I think will make it more fun. I would say my personal prediction is I do think more gyms and operators will be incorporating it. I think it has to be research led. It has to be mindful of who maybe needs to take that approach. I don't think it needs to be everyone. But going back to that, 80% or just under 80% of the US that is inactive at the moment, that is potentially another element. There are a lot of people that maybe at the moment are out of breath or uncomfortable kind of walking down the road. Therefore, they are not in a position to get in, be doing more physical workouts in the gym. Maybe this is an entry point for those. And with that also comes what else they need to focus on around it. There needs to be a conversation around the nutrition element. There needs to be a real program made for them. Also just need to know, when to leave the GLP-1 and actually just kind of when that stops and when that point comes. So my prediction is it definitely will be incorporated into most gyms and studios, if not, potentially all of them. But it will just have to be with a more research is needed into what that program needs to look like. It shouldn't be for everyone. It should only be for a small percentage of people. And it needs to come with, other aspects of supporting that process with like nutrition, with a personalized program, etc. So yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, even just the legalities of it,
Yeah,
like if you're putting yourself behind that and supporting someone through a program, what all of that looks like. And I'm sure I like the fact that it's a debate format. It should be a debate. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a new arena that we're entering, and with debate comes curious questions, and it's not necessarily that there's one side right, one side wrong. It's how you
absolutely.
learn by seeing 2 different perspectives come together. So I think that's a really smart approach, because with the enthusiasm of what it could mean, there are also a lot of questions of where our scope is in that space and what this all should look like. So if anyone is disillusioned that we're not in a learning phase, that would be where I'd
Yeah,
lose the trust, you know?
for sure. I think hopefully everyone accepts that none of us completely know about this just yet. I think there are arguments on both sides for sure. And I think, hopefully the debate will not only kind of, obviously spark different ideas, but maybe give insights into, if you're someone that's completely against it, maybe there might be an argument for actually there is a right way of implementing it. But yeah, it's not something that's going to be easy to implement. I think that's why there's a lot of controversy around this.
Absolutely. Another topic, obviously, you mentioned AI and like hyper personalization. That was the name of the game in all of the trend reports. So when you're hearing hyper personalization, what do you envision? How do you feel that kind of blanket buzzword can actually
Hmm.
be implemented and help health club operators streamline their operations and really help with member retention down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I feel like we have all been speaking about for a long time, and no one knows. Maybe is we're not doing it exactly the same way across the community for sure. I think what maybe is something that I've seen more and more talk about in terms of hyper personalization, also leading into women's health, is just focusing on even things like hormone tracking, maybe understanding what your program should be around your cycle and things like that, which I think there's not maybe enough focus on at the moment. And I know a lot of women are a little bit question mark around that. So I think that's something that going into, further into this year, I hope to see kind of more around. I also just think, again, not just in terms of fitness, but like I said, bringing in nutrition programs, bringing in mindfulness programs, time for recovery and rest. I think this all needs to be incorporated into that personalization piece. It can't just be a focus for fitness programs. But that's where a lot of the partnerships with like the wearables and tracking and the data that comes from that is going to be really useful. And, we seem to be building a lot more of the data. It's just understanding how we can best present it now going forward and actually, show back to the consumer in a way that they can very simply understand.
Yeah, again, that women's health piece, I actually love that you keep circling back there because it's so true on hormone tracking, periods. Let's face it, for how many years was this like some taboo topic, especially as a woman,
Yeah.
even though it's like women, this happens to us monthly. Like we know the name of the game. And I've been so impressed by the Gen Z consumer and what they do on social media. Like I truly feel like they were the leaders in breaking the barrier of like, this is an impact in my life. And the fitness influencers that decided to take a bite and really amplify this message. And then on the flip side, you have like the Gen X or older millennials that are talking about perimenopause and how
Yes.
that's impacting their workouts. And I'm like, this is now a part of the conversation that I think as women, we're kind of done being mute about, and we also want support. So again, to your point, like it's so fascinating to see more companies leaning into this femtech space. People aren't playing in there. I just feel like that's such a missed
Yeah.
opportunity. But boutique fitness, obviously, our boutique gyms go
Yeah.
through different elements that they need to learn compared to our large big box gyms. So, how do you feel the state of boutique fitness is as we head into 2025? Obviously, we've seen this huge appetite and resurgence of Pilates, but are there any other trends in that space that we should be watching?
I think for studios and boutique fitness, we were maybe a little bit conscious of what the uptake would be for the 2025 event. You hear a lot about it being a difficult year for studios and boutiques. So I guess, have had an eye on that. Surprisingly, in terms of, uptake for who's joining our event, it hasn't affected it. So that's positive. I think there is, I guess, in terms of positives and in terms of opportunities for boutique fitness and studios, I think they definitely offer a really strong opportunity for, and I know I've touched on this a lot, but that kind of idea of social workouts, group fitness, community. I feel like they have a really strong opportunity for that because a lot of those are obviously offering, group workouts and classes. And that's something that I think there will be more and more people switching to that kind of format of workout for this year, especially even so like one of my friends now has kind of gone sober, no longer drinking, so nights out maybe not so much fun for her anymore, so she wants to go to a Pilates class together and then grab a a smoothie after, or can we do a gym class together and go for lunch. So that kind of format, I think they have a real opportunity to dig into. I know for even on a personal note, I'm a gym class, like a group fitness girl. That's what I enjoy. And there's a studio that I go to, and you get to see the same faces. And, every week in, week out, you kind of get to know everyone in the class, to the point that now that people within that studio and the classes have started to do summer and Christmas parties where everyone they know gets invited. They create a WhatsApp chat. It's not the studio doesn't run this. The people have started to build this community where they, on a Saturday class, people go for lunch after. So yeah, that's something that's really a really nice part of fitness that's growing, and I love to see that. And that's a real opportunity that I think they can dig into. I think potentially going further into 2025 or, further ahead in time, you might start to see, I guess, co-location of studios and boutiques and gyms. They might start to actually work together. If I have a Pilates studio and I'm a boxing studio, could we come together and have this offering shared? Because that might be the way to meet, the kind of new consumer that wants variety, more and more variety in their workout, especially off the back of COVID. I know we don't really like to talk about that too much, but the consumer's
It had
changing.
an impact still, yeah.
Yeah, and they want to try different things. They maybe their attention span is changing slightly. They don't want to do the same 4 workouts a week. So maybe kind of bringing different offerings together in one is a potential way that could be, tackled and could be supporting different workout classes together.
Yeah, your first point for sure is a huge member retention piece because I live in the city of Vancouver. We have so many boutique studios, and I always make the joke like our local run club is Tinder. It is how people are dating without question. Like that is how
Yeah.
these are working. And with the sober curious movement, like we just had our first complete no alcohol store opened here with all the diverse options of like sober drink offerings. And it's because like our Gen Zs are like, hey, did you guys know this is poison? Like they're the smart ones that are kind of putting their foot down on it. And I even just sent in my own, I have like a bunch of different social groups I'm part of. And in the WhatsApp chat, I put, because we had a contrast therapy studio, which we have quite a few of them, but they basically kind of mirrored the othership format. So it's very beats playing, like they have a DJ set on Friday nights as you're cold plunging, but mixed with aromatherapy and meditation and all the rest of it. It starts at 8 p.m. on a Friday. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was in my early 20s, my 8 p.m.s on a Friday were the pre-drink, which is not the healthy option. And so seeing these studios and spaces adapt because the consumer is demanding that. With the research that you've done, obviously you're talking about the fact the consumer has changed. They want that variety pack.
The other thing that, the consumer's probably changed with is where they work out from. So, and this is potentially something that, maybe is more difficult if you're a studio or a boutique, a slightly smaller studio as well, is sometimes they want to be able to just do the workouts at home. Sometimes they want to be able to do it in the gym. Sometimes they want to be in a class. So being able to have that kind of variety of offering. I know some friends of mine have like a particular platform they use, and they might use those at home in the gym, but also when like traveling or doing things like that, if you're a big gym, it's going to be easy to find you probably in most locations, right? So if I go on holiday, I'm probably going to find that big gym there. If I'm traveling with work, if I'm a smaller studio or boutique, it's going to be more difficult. They're not going to have as many locations to access. So that's where I think having a digital aspect, a platform where you can, still communicate and be part of that studio, but maybe at home or on the go or in your hotel room, whatever that looks like, is something that, there needs to be more and more of, especially for the smaller boutiques and studios. And sometimes that could be a challenge.
Totally. Well, I know that you're going to be gathering thought leaders very soon, just at the beginning of February. And we were kind of touching on this before we hit the record button. It's in Los Angeles, and obviously everyone's eyes have been there since the start of the new year. We have watched the devastation and the destruction with the wildfires, and people can be reassured the event is still ongoing. And I just think that that's important to mention. But on top of it, I understand that you're looking into integrating a charitable narrative into the event. So talk to me a little bit about kind of what considerations have been made, as obviously we know there's an impact not that far away from where we're going to be gathering and talking about people living healthy, happy lives, but we have this stark reality in real time happening.
Yeah, for sure. It's really difficult, right? And it's obviously just awful what's happening. I don't think anyone kind of expected going into this year that this is where we would end up in January. So it's terrible. And I think, it's very much top of mind for us. The event will still be going ahead. Obviously, if anything changes, we will be communicating that. But that's kind of what, for what's happening with us. It's not kind of too close to our venue, but obviously we have to be mindful of what's happening around us. So we are going to be working with some charities and seeing what we can do, potentially looking at, getting, every time someone fills out a survey, we can make a donation. So we're just working out what that looks like, but it's definitely something that we will be doing for this year in particular. We also, I should mention, we partner with Explore, Mariana Tech. They were running like a private drinks reception with us, and we have shifted that just to keep, some of the costs that would have been in the private drinks actually to put to the charity. So really appreciate that from Mariana Tech as well, who's our partner. So they'll be working with us. We're just kind of working out what this can best look like and how we can give something back, and just be aware of what is happening in the surrounding areas, because it is obviously terrible, and when we do have it very much top of mind.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone can kind of sympathize as well when you're event planning. There's so much orchestration that happens
Yeah.
months and months prior, and there are just situations that unfold that cannot be predicted. But I think that that's incredible that you're looking through a lens of how can we proceed, because we do as an industry, I think, need to unify, to gather, to learn, and also at the same time be mindful and respectful of the community that we're gathering in. And that's a great way to give back. For people that have not attended, maybe their calendar is still open. When is this event taking place? Are they able to still take part if they're having a listen and thinking, hey, I'd like to hear from some of these thought leaders?
The dates are the 11th to 13th of February. And absolutely, we are still open for registrations. Also, if anyone has any questions or wants to find out if we can support them in a bigger way, more than happy to have that conversation.
I'll make sure to have all the details in the show notes. So if you are listening and looking for more information, you can grab those there. But I thank you for giving us a little insight of what we can expect as we're rapidly flying through this year already. To your point,
Yeah.
already a couple weeks to the first event. And I know that it's always busy putting these things together. So I really appreciate you carving out the time and space to join me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Krissy. This has been fun.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Krissy Vann. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.